welcome to this episode of Star Wars Declassified, where we look into different facts and stories revolving around the Star Wars canon universe and lore. In today's Declassified, we'll be taking a look at the Hutts, what made them so powerful and feared in the galactic underworld, and how they ultimately rose to power. In ancient Hutt culture, even before the foundation of the Old Republic, the Hutts were actually a warrior race, settling their disputes on both the battlefield and in ritual duels. The Hutt civilization was so incredibly ancient that its early history became lost and mythologized. For example, it's unknown if they developed space flight themselves or simply stole the idea. Hutts in their prime were also a historically dominant race and formidable fighters. Physically powerful and deceptively intelligent, such Hutts like Rakkus were perfect examples of the impressive physique that Hutts in days long gone were capable of. In addition to their sheer size alone, it also made them hard to damage, much less kill. This is due to them having a very special thick skin, which allowed them to be resistant and immune to poison, blaster fire, and even Jedi mind tricks. Considering that Hutts even have an average lifespan of 10,000 years and that they can keep growing as they age, then along with their brute strength, they can just as easily outlive their foes as well. As the Hutt civilization expanded, Hutts were quite ruthless to any new species they encountered. If a new species were a real threat or too weak, that said species was annihilated. Those species that remained were just right, being strong enough to serve as slaves and underlings, but weak enough to rarely rebel. It was through enslavement, after all, which helped jumpstart the Hutt Empire. And since the core worlds is where the majority of governments were always located, then the Outer Rim was ripe for the taking for the Hutts. Of course, by the time the core governments did spread out to the Outer Rim, then by then the Hutts had already conquered quite a decent chunk of the galaxy, which eventually had become known as Hutt Space. Taking advantage of the slave trade as well allowed the Hutts to become incredibly wealthy. And with that wealth also came the ability to pay high-level mercenaries and bounty hunters to accomplish whatever they needed. Furthermore, as merchant lords, the Hutts also began to make deals and alliances throughout the galaxy, lending credits to those who needed it, but then brutally enforcing the interest on those loans. And having done and repeated this process for so many generations, then it's of little surprise that their political and financial power had become so vast and potent. It should also be noted that not all Hutts gained power the same way, as some took a different approach, such as described in Aftermath Empire's End, Nima the Hutt, who had a cult built around her on Jakku, where she was seen as the equivalent of a deity and worshipped by the people around her temple in this said cult. Of course, all good things must end. And by 32 BBY, the physically dominant Hutts were simply nothing more than a story, as majority of Hutts at that point were already leading sedentary lives as they had become complacent and lazy, thus no longer having any need to exercise or struggle physically. That said, they still of course possessed a high level of intelligence. But by then, that was all that was needed for them to continue to run their criminal empires that had been long crafted in centuries past. And that'll do it for this episode. If you enjoyed what you saw, please like and share it, along with subscribing to the channel to not only support it, but keep up with Star Wars news, gaming, and canon lore released every week. And consider following me on Twitter and Facebook to never miss out on the latest Star Wars related content. And if you want to further support the channel, then check out our Patreon page to become a Knight of Silo, or click the YouTube join button to join the Silo fleet. Or if you want to continue the conversation, then join us on the official Silo Discord server. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.